Welcome, everybody, to Helping the Brave podcast. My name is Amy T. Meyer, and Ed Parcaut may or may not be joining us. He is at the vet with his wife's dog. He says his wife's dog. I don't think that's true. Anyhow, I'm with a Army veteran buddy of mine, Jon, and thank you, everybody, for joining in. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. So, Jon, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, there's a lot to tell, I guess. Let's try not to overshare. My name is Jon. I'm with Minority Veterans of America. That's one of the things that I do. I am also an Army veteran. I am currently an Army spouse. I am also a dependent, I grew up as a Army brat, or a Navy brat, rather. So I kind of hit the trifecta there. I got all three of them nailed down. Let's see. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a father, a husband. I'm a lot of things.
Very good. So why did you choose the Army?
Funny story. My dad and my grandfather were both Navy. And so whenever I was thinking about joining the military, naturally that was the first place that they were taking me to. My first choice was actually the Air Force, but the Air Force at the time had a policy that if you had any tattoos, because any tattoo requires a waiver for the Air Force, you couldn't get in. So that was out the window automatically. So my dad was like, hey, here's the Navy recruiting office. Let me take you to talk to my buddies. And so I was talking to them, and, after they were telling me what Navy life would look like, I'm like, I really like land, actually. So I'm going to go next door to the Army folks and see what they have to offer. And the rest is history, as they say.
Very good. So we always ask another question, and that is, what do you use today that you got from the Army?
Great question. It's kind of hard to choose just one. I would say as a parent especially, I take a lot of my inspiration for disciplinary action, especially with a moody teenager in the house. He's about to be 14. So, we've done a lot of front back goes and front leaning rest positions moves and, things like that. That's definitely something that I use almost on the daily. We're getting a little better, not a lot, but we're getting a little better. So that's definitely been a huge influence and something that I use from the military in my day-to-day for sure.
Very good. And what do you do now?
Yeah, so I am an IT guy actually at the credit union here on base. I actually just recently got transitioned over to the information security department, which is also what I used to do in the military. I was an IT guy at the S6 shop there.
Very good. And so for those of us who don't know, we're in Washington State, and he's talking about Joint Base Lewis McChord. And so, thank you. My next question is, when you were in the military, was there anything that really surprised you? That because you're, like you said, military dependent and grew up that way. Was there anything that after going into the military that surprised you?
I think actually we were talking about this the other day. When you grow up, even as a military brat, you always see the movies and everybody's like, sir, yes, sir, whenever they're doing basic training or drills or whatever, it's like a drill sergeant presumably yelling in their face. And I remember one of the guys in my platoon made that mistake of calling the drill sergeant sir. Needless to say, that didn't go over very well for him. So we all learned a lesson that day, all of us, because nobody else said it, but we all were like, oh, okay, so don't call them sir. Noted. Good plan. Don't call sergeants sir. They get very offended about that.
Yes, that is. So tell us about your transition story. When you went through, because what year did you get out?
2013. It's been a while.
So I was going to say, so it hasn't been that long in my world, but it has been a while. So did you go through the traditional TAPS or internships or different things like that? Tell us about your experience.
Whenever I got out, ACAP was still a thing then. And honestly, the program, I don't think I've actually had a lot of exposure to the TAPS program today because of the work that I'm trying to get done on Fort Lewis. And it's a way more comprehensive system than it was even, those few years ago in 2013, whenever I was getting out. I think actually this was probably 2012 whenever I was going to those classes. Then it was basically like a death by PowerPoint. And then, nobody actually bothered to like actually connect you with resources that you could use on the outside, or to even give you like a clear view of what life might look like once you're a civilian again. Whereas these days they're very intentional, it seems like, on making sure that the veterans have like a clear vision of what they're going to do, or at least where they're going to go. Like if they're going to school, then they actually connect them with, like you mentioned, the entrepreneurship programs or the internships that are connecting a lot of veterans that during those TAPS programs. They didn't really do that then. And so I kind of got out of the military not really knowing what I was planning. I wanted to stay in IT, but the military didn't really do anything as far as like getting me certifications because I didn't want to reenlist. So I just kind of had like the training, right? And so it took me a while to find any kind of work after I got out, actually. I was actually, I think, unemployed for probably about a good 4 or 5 months there. And then I got a job offer. And then literally the same day that I started that job, I got another job offer. And I was just like, where have you guys been the last 5 months? What the heck? But that's how it goes, right? When it rains, it pours. And actually, that was Intel whenever I worked there. I had actually started working for the state of Washington as like a temporary employee. And then I got an offer to work at Intel. And so that kind of put me down the path of remaining in IT. I took the gig at Intel and I lasted there for a good 4 or 5 years. I actually ended up getting free college because of it. And that's how I ended up where I am now.
Okay, so to do what you do now in the civilian world, you needed to get additional college rather than just the Army training?
Correct, yeah. Like healthcare, the IT side of the house is very certificate and formal training driven. And so the Army didn't really provide me with anything that would get me anywhere in the civilian world with that if I wanted to stay in that career field. But luckily for me, somebody at Intel was willing to take a chance. And they did. Ironically, we're actually still friends. I'll be seeing them here in about 2 weeks. We haven't worked together in almost 5 years now, but they're still really good friends of ours. So yeah, that was it was definitely like a chance, like I said, but it worked out for everybody. So yeah.
So but you said that you feel that the programs that are available now are much more comprehensive.
Oh yeah.
What would you tell a service member who maybe was an IT professional on the cusp of getting out? And so you could even say, if it's any different for a year from now or 6 months from now, what advice would you give them?
Sure. I would say that certifications are your friend. If the Army didn't pay for you to get like your A+, it's like kind of like the baseline IT certification. Everybody recognizes it. That's a great place to start. If you can get the military to pay for it, do it. It's like $2,000, $3,000 on the outside for the class for like 2 weeks. And then I think the test itself is like $200. So if you get the military to pay for all of that for you, do it. If you can't, study up. The libraries on post, the Army MWR system has access to study guides. Use them while you're in and get yourself certified before you get out. That way you're ready to hit the ground running. Don't be like this guy and, just kind of hope things work out. They did eventually, but it took me a long time to get here. So don't be like me, learn from my mistakes and take advantage of the resources you have. There's a lot of stuff out there for you.
So what do you think is the best time frame to really, like, if you're thinking of not reenlisting, how much time do you think somebody were you a sergeant when you got out?
No, I was just a specialist.
A specialist,
Yeah.
not just a specialist, a specialist. So junior enlisted, I think specialist still qualifies into the junior enlisted category.
Yep.
Do you think it's good to really, deep dive into preparing yourself 6 months, or do you think it should be really a year out?
That's a great question too. Yeah, I would say the earlier the better. If you're still in, even if you're not sure if you're going to reenlist, it never hurts to get certified while you're in it. They don't expire. I think they're good for 2 years at least, or 4 years, one of those. And it also depends on the certification that you have. Some of the Cisco certs are good for 5 years. Some of them are only good for a year. But all they can do is advance your career while you're in, and then also give you more to go off of. And who knows, you might actually get promoted, or you could use it to justify them putting you to a different position where you gain the work experience. So when you get out, not only do you have the formal side of it, you also have the experience side. You can lean on both of those when you're applying for positions. rather than just saying, hey, I have a piece of paper, I've actually done the work.
Okay, so you talked about how you used your military experience in parenting, which is wonderful because I did the same thing. I'm not gonna lie. Um, I have girlfriends that are like, "Oh my God, you are so military," and it is what it is. But do you use, even within the credit union world? I know there's things within the IT world, but even just in, whether it be finding a job or keeping your job, that you feel um, are attributes from your time in service?
Definitely. So now I'm in information security, and a lot of that actually is, I guess, you don't really realize it at the time, but when you get out, a lot of like just like the military mindset is very like security oriented in general. And so coming to the civilian side and then being in information security, a lot of those also translate right over into that position. And so like these things that you think are like, I guess, common sense, like don't leave your computer unlocked, or have a long password, or make sure that the doors to your building locks. Like again, security minded. Like we're all like, like checking out the area, making sure that like you have the exits marked, like where your passive egress are, etc. You have your sectors covered, right? These things come in handy, and they do translate almost perfectly, really, to the security world. And that's not as common as I guess those of us that have been in realize. And so it kind of makes, like, when you're doing things like information security, even a lot of it comes naturally because it's just the kind of mindset you have when you're coming to the job.
Very good. So then you also mentioned that you're a military spouse. Now, how is it going from being active duty to being a military spouse? I ask this because that is my journey as well.
Sure. Yeah, so it's been a ride for sure. We know a few other military couples that are, both military, either they're both still in or one of them wasn't and now is not. And then we met a few people where one of them was not in and the other one was a service member. And one thing I've come to understand is that it gives you a deeper level of understanding and like realizing that, it's a part of the mission. You don't own them 100% of the time, even though, it'd be nice to just be like, where are you going? I want you here every day at night, right? But we don't always have that luxury as military spouses, and some things are bigger than ourselves, as it were, or our relationships and our families. And so it's just, it's a part of the life, as they say. You just kind of got to roll with the punches. But yeah, I think you and I both, being a military spouse, it gives us that additional, deeper layer of understanding. And I guess it makes the sucky parts of being a military family a little bit easier, I'd say. Because then at least we're not like agonizing over, I guess, things that are, more difficult to comprehend, or we have to kind of learn a whole new language, essentially, because the military is definitely its own subculture. We already got that part in the bag. So it does make it just that much easier. It still sucks, but it's life.
Very good. You and I have, because for those who didn't catch on, and we're friends, we've been friends for a couple of years now.
Oh, yeah.
But both of us had different looking like at veteran service organizations and different things like that. So this podcast is Helping the Brave. So it's helping people who are veterans, and it's connecting resources and talking about our transition stories. So we've already talked about our transition, or your transition story, and mine a long time ago. But you're the chapter president or state president for minority vets?
I am the chapter lead for Seattle chapter of Minority Veterans of America. Yes. We don't have state chapters, so our big city chapters effectively double as state chapters also, because that is our presence in the state. I am one of, I think, 4, soon to be 5, hopefully, chapters. So we have Seattle, Richmond, Virginia, Atlanta, and then we have a presence in Chicago and San Antonio also.
And you just had an event
Pittsburgh.
in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is the other one, sorry. And we did just have an event in San Antonio, yes. Let's talk about that. That was one of a series of 6 supply drops. We were doing those all over the country due to some awesome funding that we've received from some of our grantors. We're giving direct, tangible aid to veterans across the country. So we had one in Seattle, which is whenever I came on board about a week prior to that. We had it at the Seahawks Stadium, which was awesome. The Seahawks have a organization called Task Force 12, which is a conglomerate essentially of veteran service organizations in the immediate Seattle area that service Seattle area veterans. And the idea is to connect all these different veteran service organizations together with each other and each other's resources, as well as the Seahawks resources. So that's kind of part of how we were able to utilize the Seahawks Stadium as an event venue for us to do that supply drop here. And then, so San Antonio was our fourth. The Seattle one was third. San Antonio was our fourth. We have one actually this weekend in Richmond, Virginia, which is a continuation of the series. And then we have a very large presence in Richmond. That's where a lot of our national leadership is based now. And then we have one in August at the end of the month. I believe it's the 28th in Chicago. And that's the last of the series of 6. And then hopefully this will be a continuing thing. But of course, as all things with veteran service organizations, it always depends on funding. But we shall see. We definitely want to do more.
Okay. So do you have the Richmond information so you can say like where, what time, and how to get involved?
Definitely. So the Richmond stuff is all on our social media. We have all of our connections there. We also have a Facebook event that shows the who, what, when, where, why. You can also sign up on our website itself, minorityvets.org, to volunteer if you'd like to volunteer your time. We also carry food pantries at all of our locations if you'd like to donate. We are more than happy to take those and distribute those to veterans that are in need. And of course, depending on what they're looking to do, we can always connect them with other resources as well. We have a lot of different volunteer positions, not only for these supply drops, but for stuff that's going on in their chapters all the time. So
that sounds very cool. Yeah. So anybody in any of the locations that he said, or anybody who just, I do think it's easy to go to minorityvets.org and then also to either on Facebook or just on the interweb.
Yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're on all the social medias. So you can find us on any one of them if you'd like. Our biggest presence, of course, are on Facebook and Instagram. But we do have a presence in all of the major social media outlets.
Very good. Do you think, is there any like one type of item that minority vets need no matter where they are in the country, or is it very unique to each different area?
Yes and no. One thing that a lot of veterans are always in need of and will always be in need of is hygiene items. So hygiene kits are always very helpful and useful. Cash, of course, always helps because then if we are trying to do specific types of donations, like for the supply drops, for example, a lot of them, we actually build out kits. And so to help with kind of like the uniformity, right, and make sure that all of the stuff we're giving to every vet is just right dress. We just utilize the funds to purchase those directly from vendors that are donating them or giving us discounts. And then distributing those during our supply drops. So that would also be helpful. I mean,
Very
everybody
good.
likes money, but.
Certainly. All right. So we're going to switch back to you. Do you have a favorite Army memory?
Oh boy. Yeah, I remember one time we were doing DNC stuff and there was a sergeant who was leading us, and this was kind of just like a casual thing, sergeant's time training, like we're just sitting around doing nothing. So they're like, hey, somebody do something. Let's make these guys have something to do. So we go out to this field out in the parking lot and we're doing DNC. And this sergeant that didn't particularly like me, I had gum in my mouth because we had just, gotten called out from doing IT stuff to doing DNC practice. So I just kept it in the back of my mouth, but I wasn't chewing on it. Well, I was one leading the formation. So of course, whenever I'm calling cadence, he could see the gum in my mouth. And so he proceeded to chew me out. I was smoked very heavily. It was a good time. And then whenever I stood up and I was just like, Sergeant, if we're not supposed to have this stuff in formation, then why do you have a dip in your mouth? I got in trouble for that, but it was worth it. I also got smoked a lot more, but that's okay. I was definitely in shape. So it worked out and it was definitely worth doing that. I'm actually still friends with them too, on Facebook and everything. But yeah, that was a fun time.
Well, that's cool. Are you friends with people like throughout your military journey, or do you just have a couple? And for me, it's just it's actually just one duty station. All the other duty stations I was at, I haven't really found very many from my time.
Huh. Yeah, a lot of mine are, although ironically, a lot of the ones that I'm still friends with are ones that I not only went through like basic and AIT with, but also ones that we got stationed at Fort Lewis together. So we kind of like followed each other through different PCS moves. Um, yeah, I actually just hung out with one of my buddies that I've known, since when did I, what, 2010, 2009, something like that. We were in Denver back in February, and I have a buddy that just moved there, and so we were hanging out with them, and I haven't seen him in probably 5 years, but it's always the way with military buddies. Whenever you see them again, it's like no time is lost. You just kind of pick up where you left off, and yeah, it was a good time. And I've had friends that come through for various training, and we always hang out, grab drinks, whatever, while they're around. Yeah.
Very good. Let me think. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, there's a lot that we could talk about, but I guess specifically, I know a lot of folks, especially around here in Washington, haven't heard about minority vets. And so we're just trying to get the word out there. We have our largest presence, of course, in the Seattle area, but as you know, I'm here in the South Sound, and so we're trying to expand our reach in this area. Eventually, of course, we would like to have a statewide presence, and obviously more chapters across the country, which is the whole aim, to grow our reach to help more veterans. And then I'm specifically trying to reach out to the Fort Lewis folks and McCord folks and engaging all of them into various stuff. I would like to plug that we have a few events coming up recently. We have the MVA birthday party that's coming up. And so we're actually doing individual chapter celebrations across the country in all of our different locations. Ours will be in Seattle, potentially at Seward Park. We're waiting to hear back on that. But you can always follow us on social media to see the final details. That will be August 7th. And then we also have a series of dance events coming up, actually. Still waiting on some of the final details, but that'll be likely September, October, and November. They'll be up in the Seattle area. There'll be one a month is the current plan. And Minority Vets, specifically myself, we've teamed up with another veteran service organization that was founded by a woman veteran. She is a retired full-blood colonel called Battlefield the Ballroom. And she's been an avid dancer throughout her entire career. She was in the military for, I think, 32 years, long time. And I guess she kind of like married the two worlds. She's in healthcare. She's been a medical provider for quite some time also during her career, and now that she's out. And she founded this organization after she realized that it helped with some of her recovery from PTSD that she was experiencing. And so she's actually conducted a few studies to determine the tangible mental health benefits from dance for survivors of PTSD and survivors of MST. And so trying to bring those two worlds together is kind of the whole purpose of her organization. And so we're taking that into minority veterans, and we're teaming up together to run a series of events later this year to help a bunch of veterans and community members come together, and obviously for fun, but also hopefully to benefit all of us that were coming out of COVID, and other veterans that may not know that these resources are available to them, or just, to have a good time, meet other veterans, which is always nice.
I agree. I think I will say, put it out there. If anybody needs to get a hold of Jon, you can go to info at helpingthebrave.com, and we will make sure to connect you guys, because I do feel like it's through connection, because that's part of, what we're doing here too, is just trying to connect people and give platforms for speaking and resources. And there's just so many different solutions out there. Even if the problem is similar, the solution that's best for you might be a little bit different.
Yep.
Let me think of any other. What was the weirdest thing that you can say on air that happened in the Army?
That I can say on air is an interesting qualifier. It's like I have a lot of interesting stories, none of which are probably PG-13. Weirdest thing, huh? I do recall one time, this was whenever I was in the S6 shop at Brigade. There was a major who I installed a printer for, and then I think I got a call back like 3 days later. For those of you that aren't, I guess, IT savvy folks, there is a USB-B cord, which is kind of like a D shape, And then there's the Ethernet cable. Everybody knows what that is. It's what you use to plug in like your internet or your modem or anything like that. It's the one that looks like kind of like a phone cable, but it's a little bit bigger. Anyhow, this was a local printer, so I used the USB to set it up to his computer. Well, it came back and he told me it wasn't working, and I was like, well, I'm the one that installed it, and it was like 2 days ago. It was working then. What happened since then? And he's like, well, nothing. It just stopped working all of a sudden. So okay, you know, I'm sitting here looking back behind the printer and everything else. He had put the USB cord into the Ethernet port, which I didn't even know was possible. And actually, like, I had to physically, like, I had to cut it out because it was so jammed in there. Like, I don't know how the printer didn't break, because he literally broke the port. Like, he shoved it in there so hard. So that was like one of those like really amazing things. I'm just like, how did you even do that? Like, I'm not mad. I'm just confused. That was very interesting.
I actually think that's a fabulous IT statement. I'm not mad. I'm just confused.
Right. That should be my new mantra.
I think on so many different levels, as being a person who oftentimes confuses the IT department. You know?
Yeah.
So
it was very interesting.
I feel that Major's pain. I've not done that, but I'm not saying I couldn't have.
I mean, we all make mistakes. I definitely sat there and looked at machines before for about 20 minutes before I realized it wasn't plugged in or powered on. So it gets to the best of us.
It does. And it's funny when these things happen. My husband one time was saying that he was picking up books and he goes, it's a book about genres. And I'm like, or genres? And he's like, oh, that's how that's spelled.
Nice.
So, you know, we all have moments.
Yeah, indeed. We all do.
All right. So how long were you in the service? So you went from E1 to E4, or?
I actually joined as an E3, and then I just stayed at an E4. Yep.
Okay.
And I was in the minimum amount of time. I knew about a year and a half in that it wasn't going to be for me long term. So I hightailed it out of there as soon as they let me. I did actually try to re-up to deploy, but that didn't turn out so well. So probably for the best, I would guess, because it did kind of work out for me in the long run anyway on the civilian side.
Very good. Well, I think it's, you know, any time you serve, it's one of those things where you really do learn about yourself and what you like, what you don't like, how you see the world is greatly changed by military service. You know, a lot of the times good, most times good, but sometimes either way. And so I really appreciate you coming on and spending your time with us and sharing your transition story and sharing about minority vets. And I do hope to do things to support you throughout the next year. And, you know, as I learn about it.
It's going to be a fun time. Woo.
Well, and I do think it was funny when we were talking about why we picked the veteran service organizations that we did, and we had similar reasons. We wanted something that was just inclusive. And so I thought it was funny that, you know, I hadn't heard about yours, and I didn't feel like before we really met, you had heard about mine. And so it's interesting that we both went to them for the same reasons, but found two that were very inclusive, but still very different. So, because AUSA is actually a military service organization, not so much a veteran service organization. Right. But I think there's a lot of overlap. And so it's kind of, I'm excited to do things together in the future.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard about AUSA, I think it was actually after I started at the credit union. And I was like, what is this? And they're like, it's the Association of the U.S. Army. You never heard of it? I'm like, I was literally in the Army. I have no idea what this is. I've never heard of this before. Talk about a fail, right?
Right. And it's, you know, that's a whole nother podcast right there. So we'll leave that one alone. But I did want to say thank you to everybody who's listening in and watching us on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and everything like that. My one last plug, hit the subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And everybody have a really great day. Thank you, Jon, again.
Bye.
And so I'll end and stay with me.